Hi, I'm Emma, 18 years old. Do you remember discussing your first period with girls and how awkward it seemed to you? Now imagine that you are 18 and these days haven't even started yet. Everyone I knew already felt like real women, and I just envied them. Watch this video to the end and find out what the consequences of stopping puberty are. It's scary to think about how one problem can torment you every day, and you don't know what to do with it. I always felt inferior among other girls. I had two best friends, Stacy and Debbie, who we hung out with all the time. We often spent the night at each other's houses and could chat until morning. We went to Stacy's once. We chatted, played around, and finally switched to pillow fights. Debbie jumped out of bed, and we noticed a red spot on her pants. I was scared and screamed that Debbie was hurt, but the girls just laughed at me. Stacy gave Debbie some white thing, and she came back a few minutes later. We were 12 years old, and it turned out that the girls had already had their periods. My friends thought I was just joking about the injury, and they didn't even realize that my days hadn't started yet. But I told them in confidence that I didn't have them yet. They started cheering me on. They said that periods caused a lot of inconvenience. There were wild pains from which they climbed on the wall. Their moods worsened, and all their clothes got dirty with blood. Did you have any problems with your period? I should have been glad to be spared the monthly difficulties so far, but that didn't make it any easier. We were growing up. We were already 14. I still didn't have my periods. I noticed that my friends began to change their appearance. They became more feminine. They grew breasts. They began to wear bright makeup and dress like grown-up girls. The girls often discussed their physiological changes, and once I could not stand it and decided to take an extreme measure. I deliberately stained my jeans with red paint and sat down at my desk. After class, I got up and complained to Stacy about a terrible pain in my stomach. Stacy said sympathetically that she understood me, and then looked at the back of my jeans, and seeing a red spot on them, advised me to run to the bathroom as soon as possible. After school, all the girls in the class congratulated me, but I was not at ease because I cheated them. I didn't have any periods. When I got home, I kept lying. My mother was very happy when she heard about my first period, even teared up a little that I was already so big. At the weekend, she threw a cool party in honor of such an event. I called all my girlfriends. We had fun till we dropped, but when everyone left, I felt very ashamed and sad. I had no reason to be happy. Those days never came. I was already 16. One day, something fell out of Debbie's purse in the school locker room. I picked it up and handed it to Debbie, asking what the strange cotton was. For some reason, she was very surprised by my question, and then began to whisper to Stacy. The next day at school, I had the feeling that someone was looking at my back all day. Suddenly, after the lesson, Debbie ran up to me from behind and with a confused look, began to take me to the toilet. We quickly flew in, and Debbie showed me my pants. There was a red spot. I couldn't believe my eyes. At last, this day came, and I became a woman. I suddenly felt light, and all the excitement went out of my head. I didn't even care that the whole school was staring at me. Hope was already glinting in my eyes, but then Debbie laughed out loud and said it was a prank in retaliation for lying to them. They figured out I didn't have my period when I picked up a tampon from the floor and handed it to Stacy, not realizing what it was. After that awful day, a photo of my ass with a red stain on my jeans went all over the school. Everyone joked at me, called me names on the internet, and even printed this photo on posters. Have you ever been bullied at school? Then you understand me. I stopped talking to my friends. I was looking forward to finishing school. Then I went to college. I was 18 and still had no periods. I started studying the literature on women's health to find out what was wrong with me. I met Mike in college. He too was different. His eyes were different colors. We quickly became close and started dating. I shared my problem with Mike, and he said that the school made fun of him too, and that he liked me like this. But I was better to see a doctor. I was afraid to learn something terrible from the doctors and delayed the examination. I knew that Mike wanted a family and children, and we dreamed of getting married and having our own home. One day, I felt a terrible pain in my stomach during a lecture. I ran to the bathroom, but it was just plain indigestion. Depressed, I returned from college and was met with an angry look from my mother. I didn't understand what had happened. It turned out that my mother was cleaning my room and found a whole bag of pads that I'd asked her to buy but did not use. My mother realized that I had been lying about my periods all along. I started crying and ran out of the room. My mother came to me and said we needed to have a serious conversation. I was afraid that she would scold me even more. And she hugged me and admitted that she had had the same problem. And she knew how I felt right now. It had passed down to me, but I was not a verdict. My mother said I would need to undergo treatment and everything would be fine. When I heard her story, I was glad that I had hope. We went to see the doctor. He asked me about my periods, and I said I didn't have it. There was silence. After passing tests and procedures, I was told what I was most afraid to hear. Since I was a child, I didn't have one ovary, so my periods were delayed, and the chance of getting pregnant was reduced to 0. At that moment, everything collapsed for me. I couldn't believe that I wouldn't have children, walk with them, hold their little hands. My mother still didn't give up hope. She signed me up for special therapy. I received it for a couple of months. My period never came, so I refused from it. I told Mike everything, and he started to calm me down. I didn't want to ruin his dreams of a family, so I suggested we break up so he could find a normal girlfriend. Mike tried to convince me that he loved me and was ready to live with me for the rest of my life. Even without children, we spent an unforgettable night together, but it was our last. I said I didn't want a relationship anymore, and I'd rather be alone. Mike left, although he really wanted to stay, and we stopped talking. A couple of months passed. I missed Mike, sometimes looking at his page in social networks, and one day there was a new photo of him with a very beautiful girl. I was devastated by the news. I was not feeling very well and began to feel sick. I threw up for a week. At first, I thought it was just nerves. Then, I decided to take a pregnancy test, just for fun. I didn't think I was pregnant. I just had to make sure. The test was positive. I couldn't believe it. I lay down on the bed and suddenly saw brownish dots on it, like old bloodstains. How had I not noticed them before? These were the marks from my period. They were so sparse that I probably didn't notice. And it had probably happened a couple of months ago. I immediately broke the news to my mother. She was happy that I had succeeded, despite the doctor's misgivings. The therapy did help. I really wanted to share this with Mike, but he had a new life and a new girlfriend. But still, on my mother's advice, I decided to call him, and he offered to meet. At the meeting, I said I was pregnant with his child, but I understood that he had another one. I saw her photo, and I did not pretend to anything. And Mike said it was his cousin. He still loved me, and he was happy to be a dad. We got married in a month, and we're going to have a girl. I am glad that my health problem has been resolved. Have you ever inherited a disease? If you like this story, then like it and subscribe to the channel. Take care of your health and never hide the truth from your loved ones.